I'm Derek Hoffman, and I'm the lighting programmer for the Mandalorian and Grogu.
Kind of explain to me a broad scope. What does a lighting programmer do on the first unit?
So, as the main unit lighting programmer is responsible for just manipulating, like controlling and manipulating the lights on first unit. So, I'm not there for setting up the control systems of the sets and testing, but I am there on the day with the gaffer, the DP, and the actors. So, any adjustments that need to be made. On set, that right there for the scene, that's what I'm doing.
What is it about Fiilex that maybe made your life easier or harder? Hopefully easier.
Well, working with Fiilex has always made my life easier, just because as a programmer, I love that they all use the same exact DMX profile. So I've been using the same profile in Fiilex for, 8 years now probably, and you guys, XY, 16-bit. And so Fiilex, one thing with Fiilex is you always know the color is going to be perfect. So even back when we first started using Fiilex, your quality control was so high that we always knew we didn't have to make individual color presets for the different lights. It was always going to be exact same color across a light that was just made, that year versus a rental light that was a few years old. They were always going to match. So that was always a huge plus. And then I think you guys were the first to have IP rated lights, so that was just always kind of a bonus. So anytime, we got to a wet set or maybe a splash was gonna happen, we never really had to do anything extra. So it was always just kind of a perk, and then nowadays it's kind of a requirement, but you guys are already ahead of the game.
Oh, yeah. No, I appreciate that. That's awesome. Is there anything about any of the lights that made your life as a programmer even, like, you've seen it grow for the last how many years, Fiilex grow and all these new lights coming out. Was there something in some of the newer lights that made your life easier?
So the Mandalorian and Grogu was the first feature that got to use the K40, and we were really excited to get our hands on it because I think up until then it was the first, big bright light made for feature films that had an encoded pan and tilt. And so up until then, we didn't really have good options with lights up in condors that weren't lights for concert, automated lighting for concerts that had an encoded pan and tilt. So you're always stuck trying to find your focus point again. And with the K40s mounted, in these fixed positions, we could always get back to exact position really easily without the gaffer's input, which is key. Another thing that we actually took advantage of was the IP rating. Another thing for big heads, not usually IP rated. And I think day one I think it was a prototype, but I think day one we got the K40s pretty soaked, and they did well, and it was
you guys
surprising.
Someone called me and was like, "Hey, these are IP rated, right?" Because they just went under a rain tower and they're still working.
Yeah, it was that whole lift was not waterproofed, and they got soaked, and they did well. So
yeah, well, that's always good to hear. You always wonder how a prototype's going to handle that. You think, okay, they've tried their best to make sure everything's ready, but then when it performed, that was pretty
impressive.
Yeah.
The K40s are great, and everyone wants to talk about them because they definitely kind of were like the all-star of this show. We got to use them in all the big night exteriors, all the big sets had a few of them here or there, or a lot of them. But honestly, there's Fiilex embedded in every set. So whether it's just like a tiny accent light that our fixtures team literally took apart Fiilexes and jammed them into practical lights on set, which happened more often than not. Or we used matrices on camera, just painted them. You can actually see them in the movie and in other shows. The matrices on camera. We use P3s back when they were P3s, mounted on props a lot, to get blaster flashes, that type of thing. Or I know for a fact we use the Q8s to spoof headlights or spaceship headlights in a few scenes actually. So really, Fiilexes are always saving the day. We know that the color is going to be accurate. We know it's going to be waterproof if anything crazy happens. But also, you have the option to do them battery powered if you need to. They have CRMX built in. So really, they're just very versatile. So we're using them constantly. I'd say the Fiilex cart is like the closest cart in staging.
I found out, probably on one of the second or third season, is you have every single button programmed and color controlled on every ship and everything. You can control everything. That's correct?
Yes.
Why?
Well, you'd be surprised. I think a lot of the other projects do just kind of light up all the buttons, and maybe a few of them will blink. But when you're punched in on those close-ups on Mando or Grogu, and you see a really bright LED like right next to their face, blinking on and off, you want to be able to either dim that or turn it off completely or stop the blinking. Any of these options is really the control that you want. And we've been together for 6 years now working on these types of projects, and so we've really kind of refined and gotten the controls to where we need them and what Dave Klein and Jeff expects. And it really does help at the end of the day. Plus, like the Razor Crest, I think we've used that for, I don't know, that thing's been on camera for so many hours that it's actually worth it to have all that control.
No, that's awesome. That's great. And then lastly, just a little bit of like, you've been on these series for so many years. What's it feel like to do you're kind of written in stone as part of a Star Wars feature. You've obviously been a part of the Mandalorian series for so long, but to be a part of a Star Wars, how does that feel?
It's definitely a dream come true, kind of like a very fulfilling moment. There's a few properties, a few IPs that when I got into this industry that I just thought, man, it'd be so fulfilling. It'd be such a pleasure to be a chance to get involved in that. And so Star Wars, obviously, very high on that list. So I think the fact that we actually get to work on a movie that's going to be on the big screen, this is peaking.
Yeah.